Hello and welcome to a special video on Kiko's knitting podcast all about gnomes. I'm Kiko and today is April 27th, but this video won't be available until the second Monday in May, as I'm going to be on holiday then and I won't be able to do a normal podcast episode. So I'm recording this special today for you to watch then. If you watch my videos regularly, you will already have seen all the gnomes that I'm going to show today. So if you're not a big fan of gnomes, this video won't be for you. But if you are interested in seeing all of my gnomes in one place, then this is your chance. As most of you will know, Sarah Shearer is the designer of gnomes, and she has declared this year to be the year of gnomes. As she has 12 published patterns, gnome patterns at the moment. And I have decided to show you my gnomes in the order that she published them, not in the order that I knit them, because I wasn't quite sure and I wanted to be able to show if the gnomes that I knit from the same pattern at the same time. So that's how I decided to do things, and I think I should just get started. I'm going to link my projects below the video, and then they're all linked to the original pattern if you're interested in that. And if you go to Sarah Shearer's homepage, I'll try and remember to link that as well. There you can learn everything about the year of gnomes. And the first pattern that she ever published was the pattern Never Not Gnoming. And I actually knit those. There are 3 different gnomes in the pattern, Natasha, Norbert and Nicholas. I knit them at some point, but then I gave them all away. And I have re-knit 2 of them this year for the year of gnomes. And the gnome that I knit in January, this was the gnome. This is my January gnome. So this is from the pattern Here We Gnome Again. Never Not Gnoming. And this is Natasha. Natasha is is one of the 2 smaller gnomes, but she has a straight bottom so she can stand. And Nicholas is almost the same size, but with a rounded bottom, so you can hang him as an ornament. At the moment, I don't have a Nicholas, but I'm going to knit one again, probably this year. So I used Hansa Farm alpaca silk yarn for this gnome, which is a ridiculously expensive and nice yarn to be knitting for a gnome, but I had leftovers from other projects that I'd knit, so I thought it was a good idea to do that. And then for February, I knit Norbert, who is the bigger gnome in the Never Not Gnoming pattern. And I think with all 3 gnomes, you always have the choice whether you knit this beard this way or this beard that way. So I did one like this and one like that. And so these are new Never Not Gnoming gnomes, but of the 3 old ones that I gave away, I was able to get one back for this video today, and that's this one. And I'm pretty sure this is another Natasha, and she's wearing a pullover. So I did not knit a beard because I knew I was going to knit one of those pullovers. They're from the pattern Never Naked Gnomes. And the yarn is hand-dyed yarn. Could be Mondschaf or could be Wolldackel, I'm not quite sure. But it's also leftover yarn from other projects. And and you can see that they are both knit from the same pattern, but this is normal sock yarn, and the alpaca silk yarn it has the same yardage as sock yarn, but it is a bit thinner, and I used a smaller needle to knit this Natasha, so you can see the size difference. But they are pretty basic gnomes. They're fairly easy patterns, so a good starting point if you start your first gnome. So that's Never Not Gnoming. Then the second pattern that she published was the Here We Gnome Again pattern. And that's the one that I fell in love with the first time I saw it. And at first I thought, well, who needs gnomes? And I already have so many patterns. Why should I buy another one? But I just like them so much that I couldn't help myself. So I bought the pattern. And I think this is the first Here We Gnome Again gnome that I knit, and you can see those beautiful cables. It has a little pom-pom on its head. I'm not a fan of pom-poms, but with this gnome, I just love it. And yeah, there's a bit of sort of cabling on the beard, and I just love it. So basically what I planned to do was I wanted to knit 4 gnomes in the same size. This is opal sock yarn, and it's their 8-ply yarn. It's like either DK or worsted weight yarn. So this is a bigger gnome than it would be with sock weight yarn. And the series, it was the series Frozen by Opal, and they had 4 colors that were not as colorful as their usual colors, but they weren't solid colors either. But because they weren't that colorful, they show the cables really nicely. And I've always wanted to do a blue one and a gray one as well. Maybe I will someday. But I have those 2 that I did knit, but I knit the pattern in sock weight yarn as well, but not as a proper Here We Gnome Again gnome, but as a Gnandalf. So my son saw this gnome and he said, oh, he'd love to have one in Gandalf's colors. So he said in the book he has a blue hat, a white beard, a grey cloak, and a silver scarf. And so this is what I knit for him. And at first the hat was without a brim, but then he complained and said he's a wizard, he needs a brim to his hat. So I improvised a brim, and yeah, and I improvised a little silver scarf, and he put this as Gandalf's staff, and as his staff can glow, he put a little tiny something that glitters onto the toothpick. So this is Gandalf's staff, so this is a Gnandalf. And if you want to see the size difference, and this is the way she has the picture in the pattern. I think, yeah, this hat is a little bit too short. I think on her pattern page, they sort of lean against each other. It looks so funny. But this is the size difference. And I've always wanted to make several little Here We Gnome Again gnomes. Oh, by the way, they're called Nancy and Neville. So I think the little one is supposed to be Nancy and the big one is Neville. So as this is Gnandalf, I still have to knit a proper Nancy, and then those 2 should be Neville's, but I also knit this one. When I got this yarn, this is a pure acrylic yarn, and I ordered it for my students who want to knit something cost effective, so they don't want to spend too much money if they're still trying things. And it's quite soft. It's good for people who are allergic to wool. So I wanted to see how that gnome looks. And now this is probably the same size difference as with the Gnandalf, but I'll try and show you all 3 at once. Oops. Okay, let's try it this way. Yips, this keeps falling over. Oh yeah, it works this way. So this is the size difference of all the 3 gnomes, and I just love the pattern. It's a lot of cables, I know, but once you learn to cable without a cable needle, it doesn't take as long, and you only ever cable 1 or 2 stitches with these gnomes, so it's not too bad. Okay, so that was pattern number 2. Pattern number 3 was Gnome Pun Intended, and that's actually my very newest gnome. I bought the pattern a long time ago, but I never got round to knitting it. And this is actually my April gnome. So I knit it yesterday and the day before yesterday. Yeah, and only took his pictures this morning. No, I finished him this morning, I think. I think I knit him. I started yesterday and finished him this morning so I could show him in the video. And as I showed you I knit the January, February, I haven't shown you March yet, but they're all solid colors gnomes. So I wanted another colorful gnome with opal sock yarn. This is the 6-ply, which is either a sport weight or a DK weight. I never quite know. But these are leftover. This is a leftover yarn from socks that I knit, and this is the leftover yarn from a little dragon that I knit last year. Yeah, and so this is the Gnome Pun Intended gnome. His name is, or her name is Nora, and Sarah says that the hat was inspired by Harry Potter's the Sorting Hat, and this is quite a fun thing to knit. It does involve a lot of knitting. There are more than 100 rounds in the hat because you keep making these pleats and they just eat up height, so you have to knit quite a bit. But I think the most fantastic thing about him is the beard, which is first knit and then you unravel the beard. And I made sure to finish the beard last night so I could get it wet and then let it dry overnight. And then when I unraveled the beard, all the crinkles from having knit it before are still in the beard, and I just love that. I think it looks really nice. I also like the fact that once I finished the pearl stitches, the color suddenly changed. I think that looks really fun. Yeah, and I'm really happy with my new Nora, who's my April gnome. Okay, then the next pattern she published was Gnome De Plume, and that was her first mystery gnome. And I don't even know how I found out about it, but I heard about the mystery gnome before it was published, so I at once got the pattern and decided to take part in the mystery knit-along. I love mystery knit-alongs, especially when they're this little and easy to do. But during the time that the first clues came out, I was on holiday, and when I packed for my holidays, I'd completely forgotten about the mystery gnome. But I was on holiday and suddenly the first clue appeared in my inbox, and I thought, well, I have to start knitting, and I always carry spare needles with me, so that wasn't a problem. And I also have knitting with me, so I was knitting on a pair of socks out of this yarn, so I just used the other end of the ball of yarn to knit Natalie's hat. So this is Natalie from the pattern Gnome De Plume, the very first mystery gnome. She's supposed to be a spring gnome, and that's why she has all those leafy and flowery details. So these patterns are really nice, and then the beard looks like another leaf, so that's why I chose to use green yarn, and she has green braids, and I decided she's a dark skinned gnome, just like this one. I like to change up skin colors because we all have different skin colors, and that's why I like to do that. Yeah, and she was the first mystery gnome, and I really like her, and it was a very fun experience to be knitting and not knowing what the gnome's going to look like in the end, but that was quite fun. It's opal sock yarn, my favorite yarn, as you can see in the background and know from all my other videos. So that's pattern number 4. Then pattern number 5 is Oh Gnome You Didn't, and that's Gnelli, and this is her, and she is so fantastic. So that was the second mystery gnome, and by that time Sarah was really into fooling everybody, so we started knitting those 3 different things, and we had no idea what she was doing and what she was up to, and whether we had to knit 3 gnomes or what was happening. So that's quite funny. So that was funny, but the real scandal was that she didn't have a beard. So instead of the beard, we knit a scarf. And this is also the first gnome that has pockets, so she can put her hands in the pocket. And she's overall a really fun gnome. This is the only gnome so far that I specifically bought yarn for. I was at a yarn festival, and Mondschaf, who's a German hand dyer, she had prepared color packs especially for this gnome. She'd seen the gnome, and she always collaborates with Sarah on her mystery gnomes. And so I picked a pack and then changed 2 of the colors. So the white yarn that was in the pack had more yellow in it. I didn't like that too much, so I changed it to one with a little bit of pink in it. The pink stayed the same, and the blue that was in the pack was a bit lighter. I did like it, but I preferred that one. So after changing 2 colors, I bought a color pack, a yarn pack from Mondschaf, and so she's made of really special yarn. Then the next pattern was No Fun Like Gnome Fun, which wasn't a mystery, but it's the smallest gnomes that she has designed so far, and they are called Noah, Naomi, and Niblet. And again, I had knit all of them, but gave 2 of them away and re-knit one of them. So this is the little Noah that I knit as my March gnome this year. So the hat and the body are also knit out of alpaca silk by Hansa Farm, just as my January and February gnomes. But the beard is knit out of some leftover mohair silk yarn, also by Hansa Farm. And I love the way it's fuzzy and hairy. I think I probably knit the nose in the wrong row, so it's a bit... So yeah, he has some beard above his nose, but that's okay, that can happen. Otherwise, he's really funny and tiny and nice. Noah is... anything. I'm not quite sure what the difference between Noah and Naomi is at the moment because I haven't got her here. But Niblet is the tiniest gnome ever. And they are so small, the Niblets. They usually come in pairs because you can wear them as earrings. So I have worn them as earrings. And if the colors look familiar, you don't need a lot of yarn for Niblets. So this is leftover yarn from Gnelli. Just switched out the colors, the blue and the pink, but it's the same color. And with these gnomes, you actually stitch the beard and the nose on. They are not knit, they're just stitched on. And I love them. And I'm going to knit another pair of earrings later this year. If you look there, there's my Go Big or Go Gnome hat. That's my swatch for the pullover, Go Big or Go Gnome. And I have decided once I have the pullover, or maybe while I'm knitting the pullover, I don't know yet, I want to make another pair of earrings, gnome earrings, to go with the pullover and the hat. So that's the plan. So that's a No Fun Like Gnome Fun pattern. Another great pattern to be starting off because they're really small. You can knit them up really quickly. If you use bigger yarn, they will end up a little taller than this Noah. So they're really a lot of fun. Then the next pattern was another mystery gnome, and it was the pattern Gnome is Where You Hang Your Hat. And that's this funny guy. And so there were several special things about this gnome. One, of course, is the beard that looks quite different to all the other beards, maybe a little bit like the Gnome Pun Intended, but that was a lot of fun to work. And it's not crocheted, even though it does look a bit like it was crocheted. It's a knit beard. And then this was the very first, well, it wasn't the first gnome with a garment. We had a scarf, but this is the first pullover that she designed. So there is a pattern underneath the pullover, and there's a little pattern on the pullover. And I think she designed the pattern Never Naked Gnomes after she did this mystery gnome. So yeah, and the other thing, of course, is the color work. This was the first color work gnome. Sarah just announced that there will be another mystery gnome this year in May, and that will be another color work gnome. So I can't wait to be knitting that. But the yarn for this gnome is Wolldackel yarn, so it's another hand-dyed. Well, the light color and the pullover color, they are Wolldackel hand-dyed yarns. And the solid color is and the white as well is Opal sock yarn, just a solid color by Opal. Yeah, and it was quite fun when we were knitting the gnome. So we were using the 2 colors, the light color and the solid color, a lot. And then we only used this color for the bottom. And I kept thinking, he won't get a blue beard. So, and maybe we'd already knit the beard. And I was so wondering what's it going to be? And then the last clue was the pullover. So we finally got to use this color properly. And then that was a big surprise. And by the way, did you notice that the hat has ear flaps? So that's fun too. So this is, what did I say this was? Gnome is where you hang your hat. His name is Nemo. I think I didn't mention that. And then the next gnome was another mystery gnome, Nice to Know Mew. And the funny thing about that one, or the interesting thing, or the new thing, she always tries to come up with something new, is that we were holding the yarn doubled. So this is Nikki from the pattern Nice to Know Mew. And so just by holding the yarn double and then mixing up which colors you hold double, you get these different effects. You get a nice big gnome without too much work. Then we knit an I-cord at the top of the hat, and then we could sew it down like this. It's a beautiful beard with a cable pattern, and another gnome with a sort of pocket, and you can put that, she can put her hands inside the pocket. Yeah, so that was a lovely knit as well. This is again, I think this is leftover yarn from this gnome, because we use so little white on this gnome. I had quite a bit left over. So this is Mondscharf. Then the light pink is definitely Wolldackel yarn, hand-dyed yarn. And I think the green and the pink are just solid colors by Opal. So this is Nikki. And then another mystery knit along. And there again, she was trying to lead us astray with the kind of things we were supposed to knit. So this is Nutmeg, the adventure gnome, but Advent of adventure is spelled in capital letters, so it's the Advent gnome as well. And that's the first gnome with a belt, and also the first gnome with legs and shoes. So that is quite fun. So we had to knit all those I-cords, and there were so many I-cords we didn't know what was going to happen, because at first everybody thought these were going to be the arms, but then what is this? So it's quite fun. And the beard is a bit like the beard on Gnome Pun Intended, but as I hadn't knit that before, this was the first time I did one of those unravel beards. And I also love the little pom-pom that you knit. I prefer knit pom-poms to the cut ones, so that is quite funny too. With this I used what yarn? Oh, I think this was one of the Hansa Farm hand-dyed merino sock yarns. They don't do them anymore, unfortunately, but I loved them. And I think it was a mix of white and the hand-dyed yarn. This was hand-dyed yarn plus the main color, which is this turquoise, which is, it's not an opal yarn, is it? I think this is another Wolldackel yarn. I think that's leftover yarn from the Stephen West shawl I knit. Not 100% sure, but I think so. Yeah, and I think the blue as well. Yeah. So lots of leftover yarns, but gnomes are perfect for leftover yarns, so that's great. So that's the adventure gnome. And after that, that was pattern number 9, Nutmeg. Then pattern number 10 was another mystery. I think all the other gnomes that I'm going to show are all mystery gnomes. So the next mystery gnome was not just another gnome, and his name is Nathan. And for that I used again Wolldackel hand-dyed yarn, and this is Nathan. And he's a fairly simple gnome again, after all the gnomes with all the special features. It's again one with cables, but different from the Here We Gnome Again gnomes. It's a bit simpler, maybe for people who like cables but don't want to do all those many cables. Maybe that's a choice for you. And I used Wolldackel yarn that was in my advent calendar. And I don't usually wear beige. It's one of the few colors I don't wear. So I thought it'd be great to be using the yarn in a gnome. And I thought the orange looked nice with the beige. And then the white beard is just the kind of normal thing to do for a gnome. Yeah, so he's, as I said, fairly simple, but still very nice and different from the others. I like him a lot. So this is Nathan. Then the next mystery gnome, that was a lot of fun too. Her Her name is Norwin, or is it a he? I don't know. This is Norwin. And Norwin works in an ice cream parlor? In an ice cream shop. So he or she sells ice cream. And again, I decided to use Wolldackel hand-dyed yarn from my advent calendar that I wasn't sure I was going to use in a garment. And this is what the gnome looks like. It's so bright, but it's the neon yellow and the neon green, and then the white yarn has neon speckles in it, so it's a lot of neon colors, but I love it. This is again a gnome without a beard, but with braids instead. And the very special thing about this gnome is that it's wearing gloves, and they actually have a thumb. So working with ice cream all day, this gnome needs gloves so the hands won't get too cold. And the hat sort of looks like ice cream, soft ice cream. So that was a lot of fun to do. And then as a special pattern, Sarah designed little ice cream cones. Cones is the word, I think. So you can have 2 scoops of ice or just 1. This is blueberry ice cream, by the way, just so you know. And because the hands are together like this, it can actually carry the ice creams, which is so funny. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And then the last pattern that she designed is Numbleberry, and that was such a surprise. So that was another mystery gnome, and I picked out some yarn in pink, light and dark pink, and a blue, and I thought, yeah, this is the yarn I'm going to knit the gnome. But then I had just started working with some German yarn that a little German company is creating at the moment, and so far they only have 4 colors. They're not dyed, it's just an actual white, beige, light gray and dark gray. And this gnome called for 4 colors, so I thought, why not use that rather rustic yarn to do a gnome and just see what the size difference will be. Sounded really interesting. So we started knitting. So this is Numbleberry number 1 for me. You could sew, oh no, this wasn't in the pattern. You're supposed to put a tassel here. I didn't do that. But it has a pocket on the hat where you can put some ornament or a button or something. And then we knit this backpack. And at first we didn't know what the backpack was for. But the reason Numbleberry has a backpack is because this little gnome got away and had to be brought home. So the pattern actually consisted of 2 gnomes, which I didn't know. So I started knitting 2 gnomes and had no idea I was going to end up knitting 4 gnomes. So this is the second Numbleberry that I knit out of this rustic German yarn. I decided to put the pocket a bit to the side on this one. I think the pattern says to put the pocket right above the nose, but I thought it was quite fun to have it to the side. And then this is another backpack, and this is the other little gnome. So the little gnome to this big gnome is actually about the same size as this big gnome. And then we have the little gnome that goes with this one. So for one pattern that I decided to do twice, I ended up knitting 4 gnomes. But as usual, I enjoy knitting them. As you can see, this one actually has a tassel on the hat. I think that was what was in the pattern. And my son so liked this version of Numbleberry that I gave it to him, I think for his birthday. And so he now has 3 gnomes. He has those 2 and his Gnandalf. And 2 of the other gnomes that I've shown you, I've given to a friend who will get them back once I finish the video. And all the others are mine at the moment until I give them away. Yeah, so that's the Leave Gnome Stone Unturned pattern, the last mystery gnome that we knit, and the next one will come out in May. You can still, I think when the video comes out, there's still a few days until the first clue appears, but I think even after the clues appear, you can still go and buy the pattern and join into the fun. When I was preparing the video, I thought it was a bit of a shame I decided to do it now, because I'm planning on knitting another gnome every month for the rest of the year. So maybe I should have done the video next year, but I just needed something to do as a special for right now, so it can be published during my holidays. And I think it's quite a lot of gnomes, and so I'm quite happy to have done it right now. Yeah, so that's all the gnomes I have knit so far that I can show you. I'm looking forward to knitting the next gnomes that come up throughout the rest of the year. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!